Welcome to the Reality of Herbal Therapy Podcast, episode 53. In this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about sleep. But before we begin, we want to inform you of our disclaimer. Do not feel that by listening to this podcast that we have dispensed medical advice to you or have given you the ability to treat yourself or others with this information. We do not directly or indirectly dispense medical advice or prescribe the use of herbs as a form of treatment for sickness without medical approval. It's not the intent of this podcast to diagnose or prescribe. The intent is only to offer herbal information from the herbalist's point of view, only for your consideration. In the event you use this information without your doctor's approval, you are prescribing for yourself, which is your God-given right. But the publisher and authors assume no responsibility. So, this morning my sister texted me a TED Talk by Adam Savage. He was one of the co-hosts of the Discovery Channel show Mythbusters. And once I get into the TED app where you can watch all of the TED Talks, I kind of it's like going down a rabbit hole. But this morning I came across one that was called Sleep is Your Superpower by Matt Walker. And this one was done last month up in Vancouver. And watching it reminded me of some really, really great stuff. And I'll put the link to the video in the show notes so you can go and watch it, because some of the stuff he talks about, it gets kind of technical in places, but getting the gist of it and everything, sleep can really change a lot of things in our lives. So I'm going to walk you through some of this. And in watching this video, it reminded me of a book that Scott James said was the best health book he ever read. It really changed a lot when my wife read it. She was the one that came across it first. And it's called Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. And I'll put a link in the show notes for that also. So thinking back on my life, for my first job, I delivered pizza for Domino's Pizza. And it was I enjoyed it. I loved it. It was a great work environment and everything. But the busiest night was Fridays, and I would go in at 5 o'clock on Friday evening, and I wouldn't get off of work until 12 or 1. And so I'd go home, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, and just be all wound up from working. Sometimes, I'd drink caffeinated soda to kind of help me stay up through the night. But it basically became a habit where I was staying up late. And it's actually taken me years and years and years to break that habit of, I still have the desire to stay up late. It's kind of like a drug. It's like stay up late and watch late night television or just be up all night. There's this drug thing to it. But sleep is so essential to our health, and some of the things that I've kind of grouped together from Matt Walker's TED Talk and Sean Stevenson's book, some things. But let's look at some of the value of sleep, what it does. In Matt Walker's talk, he talked about how our sleep, basically, after we learn something, it becomes necessary for us to sleep. And the way he put it was to hit that save button. In order for us to remember something that we've learned, we have to sleep afterwards so that we'll remember it. And the interesting thing is that they pointed out was they did a study of students, because everybody pulls the all-nighter in college before they go off for finals and everything like that. And so in their study, they studied people that stayed up all night as well, and the effect on learning. And there was a 40% difference in those that got a good night's sleep and those who were sleep deprived. So if you compare that to test scores, somebody who got a full night's sleep would get 100% on a test, whereas somebody who was sleep deprived would only get a 60. I mean, that just really stands out. Another thing he talked about in the video is our reproductive system, and how a person that is sleep deprived, their reproductive system, especially in men, is 10 years older than the reproductive system of someone who is of someone the same age. So losing sleep basically ages you by at least a decade. So if you're like me, I'm almost 50. If I were sleep deprived, I would be almost 60. And it's been something recently that's kind of like not wears on me, but I've really wondered about it, because I'll come across friends or meet friends here, there, and everywhere from high school, people the same age as me, and they've gone completely gray. Their hair is gray, and they've got certain health issues. They are basically 10 years older than me, and it was really a weight on me. And as we watched this TED Talk, Lynn pointed it out to me that could be a cause of why all my friends have gray hair and gray in their beards and everything, is because they've got that sleep. They don't sleep as much as I'm lucky to get. So one of the things that really stood out from Matt Walker's TED Talk was the effect. So he talks about how the lack of sleep has an overall effect on our entire body. But he also talked about how it affects our immune system. We have basically the lymphocytes that are in our blood that go around and they find things that shouldn't be there and they kill them off. Well, a really strong lymphocyte will actually decrease the ability for cancer to replicate in the body and to grow and to become a problem. And in fact, he said it's so much so that the World Health Organization has said that swing shift is actually considered a carcinogen. And that, when that sunk in, I was just like, wow. So if anything you take from this, get plenty of sleep to avoid some pretty nasty things. So let's talk about some of the things that you can do. So in Matt Walker's video, he talked about it, and Sean Stevenson. So I've kind of pulled these together, some things that you can do. One of the really essential things is to get more sunlight. Basically, you're building up your it's basically sunlight on the skin converts the vitamin D, the cholesterol in your body, to vitamin D, which then helps with all sorts of health things like let's go down the list. So it helps with the immune system. It helps with all sorts of essential things. So getting out and getting sunlight, and that's, in our industrialized world, we don't get out and get as much sunlight. And I know that Sean Stevenson talks about getting out first thing in the morning. Get out there first thing in the morning and get that sunlight on your skin, because that's part of the waking up process, but it also prepares your body for going to sleep later at night. So another thing to do is avoid anything that gives off a blue light. So I know when Lynn read the Sleep Smarter book, she basically went through and changed out the light bulbs in any place where we spend a lot of time in the evening. Lynn changed on her phone, how you can have it so that it will switch to a yellow light earlier in the evening, because the blue light basically is telling your eyes and your mind that it's time to be awake. So by switching to yellow lights and other things, that it basically helps your mind start working towards the going to sleep. Another thing that I found really interesting is they, in both the TED Talk and the book, they both put caffeine and alcohol together. They're both of them have the same kind of effects on sleep, even though alcohol is a relaxant and it calms your body down. The effect that it has on sleep is the same as what caffeine does, which is really, I've found really interesting, that it basically, it affects the deep sleep, the regenerative sleep that you can get. And in Matt Walker's video, I really liked, he said that our body temperature has to drop by 2 degrees in order for us to fall asleep. I have a hard time going to sleep in a really, really cold room. Lynn loves, a really cold room. But Matt Walker said, try and have your sleeping space to be at about 65 degrees. So that your body temperature can drop. And by doing that, it actually opens up for a lot of this. There's sleep cycles. There's things that go on in the Krebs cycle that certain body functions actually work better when our body is colder. So that was a really eye-opener to me. Like, drop your sleeping space to a few degrees colder. The next thing is in Sean Stevenson's book is to create a sleep sanctuary. Basically, you want your sleeping space to be your sleeping space. A lot of people they'll read in bed, or they'll get on their laptop and work in bed or something like that. And it actually is telling your mind, okay, this is kind of like a split space. So the mind doesn't know, do I sleep or do I stay awake? Do I sleep? Do I stay awake? So you want to work on that. Only have your sleep space be a sanctuary for sleep, and that's all you do in there is sleep. You want to cut out any lights, any ambient lights, and Sean Stevenson goes into a lot about how the lights and things can affect that. So another thing that really stood out in Matt Walker's video that kind of caught my ear was that when somebody takes sleeping pills, drugs, anything like that is basically there to help people sleep because they have a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep, that he said that you don't get the regenerative deep sleep, the sleep that your body needs, that it doesn't help your body do that. So I found that really interesting. Even though people will take certain prescription medications or over-the-counter drugs to help them sleep, it isn't doing you any help. It isn't doing you any good. As opposed to something like Nerquilizer and Chillin. What Nerquilizer does is it gives your body the nutrients it needs to help you fall asleep and stay asleep and maintain sleep. So these are a few things. So that really stood out to me. Like there's certain things that aren't helpful for sleep, but that Nerquilizer and Chillin are among things that will actually help you get to sleep, stay asleep, and helps you get that deep, necessary sleep. When I was going to college and I was still living in that life where I loved to be up at night and I'd study at night and be at school all day and everything, I hit a point where I kind of really had a hard time going on, and it was one of the first times Lynn gave me Nerquilizer. So, I had to start on the herbs and slowly. Well, she gave me Nerquilizer and she said, here, take this, it'll help. And she only gave me 2 capsules, and I was like, I don't, I'm okay. I don't have to have it. But she insisted, and I'm really glad she insisted. But the amazing thing about that was I took those 2 Nerquilizer, and probably within 10 minutes I was asleep. And I slept for a good 15 hours. Basically, I was so sleep deprived that I slept and slept and slept, so my body could take some time that it needed to regenerate and to rebuild and to do what it needed. So Nerquilizer is really key in if you have sleep problems and sleep issues, Nerquilizer will make a big difference. So I hope these few suggestions and these things give you a clue and an idea of what to do and how to improve sleep in your daily routine. Sleep is essential. Sleep is important to health. In Matt Walker's talk, he talked about how sleep builds the immune system. It helps with cardiovascular health. It helps with brain health. It helps our body basically function correctly. It helps the digestive system work. It helps with the elimination of toxins. There's so many things that sleep does, that sleep is essential. It's something to not overlook. In Matt Walker's thing, he talked about, you can sleep when you're dead. Well, don't take that approach. Take the approach of sleep is essential to your health and necessary for everyday life. So I would encourage you to look at your sleep schedule and make sure you're getting at least a good 8 hours of sleep every night. And then if you have any questions, let us know, and we will talk to you later.